Welcome to the Patriot Podcast, episode number 2. Today we got with us Mr. Hanson. He is one of our high school English teachers. He also accompanies choir and band. He helps direct plays. He plays the organ at the Grace Lutheran Church. I don't know what else he does, but he does quite a bit with us. So welcome, Mr. Hanson. I guess in typical podcast fashion, you kind of want to let us know a little bit more about yourself, where you came from, how long you've been here, and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Let's see, it's 2020. I started teaching in 2008, so it's been 12 years for me that I've been here at Winnie-Mac. I grew up between Gary and Fertile, Minnesota, on a farm. Went to school at North County East back when they were the Eagles. Now they're the Titans. I went to college at Concordia, which is your alma mater.
My alma mater as well.
And yeah, now I'm here and working on getting my master's, which has been an interesting but also fun challenge, especially since I've got a toddler at home and another one on the way. So it's just life is full of
the epitome of 2020.
Exactly,
all
just
over.
Craziness all over, and I'm doing it to myself, but oh well, it's been great.
Okay, I know we've mentioned this. We've mentioned this at one of our first news broadcasts. Is you're the mastermind behind creating the brand new website at Winnie-Mac?
Yeah.
What was the reason behind doing it? I know you, before you became an English teacher, web designing was kind of your thing, and I know you still do it on the side.
Mm-hmm.
What was the thought process behind redoing this website?
Well, just a little thing that maybe not a lot of people know about me is that when I went to Concordia, my first major was computer science. And I ultimately ended up switching majors to English education through a process of trying to find myself and figure out, because computer science is a lot of math, and I'm not a math person. And the reason I went into computer science is because in high school, I really got into web design. I bought this HTML book and taught myself HTML, and so I thought I went into computer science because I thought I enjoyed the coding.
Yeah.
It wasn't the coding that I enjoyed, it was the creative outlet of creating the websites. And so I'm a big Harry Potter fan, as a lot of people know. And back in high school, I created a Harry Potter fan website from scratch.
All typing HTML code?
All typing HTML
Wow.
code and CSS and everything else.
Wow.
Yeah. And gained popularity, and that was a really fun part of my life. Eventually, when I became a senior at North County East, I was asked to revamp the North County East website, which I did from scratch, HTML, CSS, the whole works.
That's a lot of code.
It's a lot of coding. And I learned a little bit of PHP at the time too, and that helped with building the structure without having to copy and paste a lot of HTML code. But anyway, so I did that. And then one day a week I went down to the Twin Valley Times to work on their website, because I was able to set up my own independent study class to do that, and to work on the school website, which doesn't exist anymore. Because since they switched over to the Titans and everything else, and they have a brand new website.
Have they gone the way of the template, where they buy a template from somebody else?
Yeah, they bought from a different company, and I forget which company it is, but it's that type of template. And then when I came here, we revamped the website the same year that I came here in 2008, and that was through Our Schools Today.
Yep.
And so I helped with that process because during my interview I had explained that I have a background in web design. And anyway, and the website was fine, and then we switched to something else last year, and I hated it.
Yeah.
and a lot of other people hated it. And
for the usability, for the looks, or for just everything.
Both. It wasn't quite as user friendly as our schools today was, at least in my opinion. And it was not very well organized, in my opinion. It was the color and the look of it, the aesthetic of it, was just not great, in my opinion, and other people shared my opinion. So I'm not normally this kind of person, but I decided to be loud about my opinion, and talk to administration and be like, I have a background in web design. I would like to recreate this website from scratch using WordPress.
Yes.
Which WordPress is a CMS, content management service, that I have a lot of experience with, because at one point I stopped building websites with HTML coding and started building with WordPress instead.
Yep.
And then through that process I helped build websites for a lot of other businesses and organizations in our communities. And so the Grace Lutheran Church website is one that I created. And that's the one that I update most often, but there are others out there too. And anyway, I guess I was loud enough that they finally consented and said, okay, you can build this website and show us what you got. And I'm really glad that it happened before this school year, because this has been a crazy school year where everything changes on the, so quickly. And one nice thing about WordPress is that it's built to have posts and pages. So pages, are static, and we can build those in and have those in the menus across the top. But the posts go on the home page, and that's something that the previous website didn't really have. If you wanted to post news, you just kind of put it on the home page and took it down at some point later. With the posts on the home page, you choose 5, 6, 7 you want visible at any given time, and then they kind of go off after a while. And that's, I think, has been really nice to be able to post news to the homepage, and then you can share that directly to Facebook and other social media. And I think it's been more organized, it's more aesthetically pleasing, at least in my opinion. And so that's kind of my thought process going through that. And for me, WordPress is a lot easier to work with than the system we were using last year. Not that I had a lot to do with it last year, but I think that it's, I think we're in a better place than we were before.
So, and that kind of goes into the next thing is with you creating the website, that puts a lot on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main reasons we have this class called Media and Production was to help that out. Mm-hmm. I think that was kind of you were kind of the mastermind behind that, to create a webmasters type class, and then it kind of, through twists and valleys, it kind of evolved into Media and Production.
Yeah, because I had some conversations with Yvonne Holmerson.
Yep.
And they had built a similar class where they run the Portable County website, and through that class also built and they run websites for their local businesses and other organizations. And
they raise money that way too.
And they make money that way too, because it's run like a business.
Yeah.
And I was having conversations with her about it, and on the one hand, I have a background in web design. I don't have a huge background in business. Yeah. And so when I've created websites for other people, the Grace Lutheran Church is my home church, so I've never charged them for my services, because I'm doing it for them. I'm really bad about charging people for my services, so I'm really glad that that this class was built, in part because it's taken some work off of my plate as far as updating the school website. There are times that Mr. Brewer will still send me something and say, I need this on like now.
Yeah.
So I'll do it. rather than wait for the next first hour to come around for the students to do it. But I think it's been a really good experience for them, for the students to work on the website and do that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, I'll admit initially I was not a fan of it. I want to do the accounting, the economics, the business math. So when this was thrown on my plate,
Right.
I was not the biggest fan of it, I'll admit that. But it has turned into something that I've actually enjoyed now. It has turned fun. Probably with these guys, I don't want to give them too much credit back here, and Mihai and Colton at home, but it has turned fun. I've done a lot of learning. But it's turned into a pretty dang good class.
Yeah.
So let's get into your teaching now.
Yeah.
This whole distance learning, this whole hybrid thing, unlike a lot of teachers, this really hasn't affected you all that much.
It hasn't. And the reason for it is because I started using Google Classroom the moment that it came out in beta version, whatever. And slowly over the last 5-6 years, I've started going paperless, and I think maybe the last 2 years I've been completely paperless. And so when we switched to distance learning last spring,
It didn't affect
me, and we were given 8 days to prepare, and I'm like, I don't think this time,
Yeah.
because I'm already ready to go. And then, hybrid learning this fall, everything goes on Google Classroom, so whether you're in the room or whether you're at home and Zooming from home, you all have the same materials, which is equitable, and it's good for the students to have everything there to look things up if they're, because I remember the days, 10, 11, 12 years ago when I was printing off worksheets,
Yeah.
and students would lose worksheets, and I have to have extras and have to go make copies and have trays for students to turn those things in. And that was a headache to have to do that, and I like to be environmentally conscious, and I was like, oh, this is a lot of paper that I'm wasting with students losing copies and having to make extra copies. And I just think it's really, really helped my teaching to be using Google Classroom and to be paperless. And I don't know if I can go back.
Yeah.
If someone asked me to go back to just printing things off and lug those stacks of papers home every night, I would find a different profession, I think.
I know the amount of paper I use is minuscule compared to what I used to.
Yeah.
And the whole running to the copier all the time is non-existent really right now.
No.
I guess it does. Some kids, some students still prefer the paper copy, and when I do put it on Google Classroom, there is still, 10-15% that will automatically print it off because they need to see that visual thing versus computer. But I'd say 85% of the students, it's all paperless.
Yeah, and I think it's closer to 95, 100 for me, because I don't accept paper.
Okay.
For students to turn those things in, and so they have to do it on Google Classroom. The only, like when we read novels, I have the option to read it on ebook for all the novels that we read, but most students will still ask for the paper copy to read that way rather than read on their screens.
So, I guess moving forward, this whole pandemic, this whole hybrid distance learning, hasn't really affected you at all. What about the hybrid part, where it was Zoom versus in person? Does that make a big difference to you?
It's easier to reach people in person. I'm not going to argue that. When I have students that are not doing well in my classes, it's a lot easier if they're in the classroom to be able to talk to them and be like, hey, Johnny, whatever, you're not doing so well in my class, what can I do to help? If they're at home, it's harder to reach them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to argue that. So, I can email them, I set up a Zoom with them. I can do all those things, but if they're not going to respond,
Yeah, it's got to be reciprocated.
that you have to be able to reciprocate, and there are just some students that aren't as intrinsically motivated to make those connections and to do what they're assigned and all of that, and so when we go distance learning next week, I know there's a few students that will still be in the building that need to be in the building because of that reason, but I'm going to try my darndest to try to stay in contact with everybody at home and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for me personally, that's where I struggle, is I like in person and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, it's the non-teaching stuff, it's the making a connection. For me, it's just hard to make a connection over a TV screen.
It is, and I noticed that when I am doing a discussion in class, I get a lot more from students in the room, like they're willing to speak up more than the students at home, because they have to go through the process of unmuting, can you hear me?
Yeah. And it seems like it's the whole, like when you're on social media, it's hard to tell sarcasm, it's hard to tell tone, it's hard to tell nonverbal.
Yeah.
And that's what, I don't want to say that I'm a jokester, but I like to have this kind of personal relationship. I like to sense the nonverbal. Are we in a happy mood? And it's just hard to do that on Zoom.
Sarcasm is my second language. So yeah, I get that.
So I guess we got a little bit more time here, but I really want to kind of end with, how do you think this pandemic is going to change the way school's taught? Is there going to be is there a normal that's going to be normal again?
Yeah.
Is there, are we going to come out of this teaching different? You got any ideas, thoughts?
And people have asked me that question, like, you know, when are we going to get back to normal, and how's it going to look when we get back to normal? And I'm not sure if we're going to be back to that point. I don't think that. I think that the new normal for my classes is already here, because I've been paperless, but I think for a lot of other teachers that were forced to go paperless because of the pandemic, at least I hope that they've enjoyed using Google Classroom and have enjoyed the paperless aspect of it, and I think that more teachers will stick with Google Classroom and stick with that. And so that, I think, is going to be more of our new normal of more paperless and more technology.
Is Zoom here to stay? Do you think we will always have students? Do you think there's a day that we're not all in the classroom again, that we're always going to have students at home?
I hope not. I hope that, because, with that previous question that you asked, I think that we have, let me step back. I'm currently doing this master's class, and it's totally asynchronous. And so you have assignments every week that are due by the midnight the next Sunday. And I have not once spoken to my professor.
Nope.
He just grades my stuff, and there you go. And part of the class is discussion boards.
Yeah.
And so you get to know a little bit of your classmates through those discussion boards, but not to the extent of, like, if everybody was in the room. And I think that's one great thing about being a high school English teacher or a high school business teacher, is that we're in the room and we're having these conversations. And because school is not just about education.
No.
It's mostly about education, but you're still socializing, and you're working in that social emotional learning piece. And I think that I'm trying to get back to the point, but I think that we need to. I think we need to have the students in the room in order to work on that and to build on that. And so I hope that when this pandemic is over, I hope that most of us are still using Google Classroom because I really like it. But I hope that we can put our owls away
Yes.
and not have to use them again. And which is sad because they're an expensive piece of technology, which has really, really helped, I think, all of us in the midst of this pandemic, because we can do this hybrid and we can have students in the room and students at home and everybody can interact with each other, and it's really helped. But once this is over, I'll be happy to put it away.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to find too many people to argue about that,
Yeah.
students or staff.
Yeah.
It looks like we're probably on our time limit. So before we go, I'd like to say thanks again to
Yeah.
Mr. Hanson.
It's been a pleasure.
Our podcast number 2. If people want to get a hold of Mr. Hanson, I know you are all over social media.
I am.
Can you want to just tell the audience where we can all see
gosh.
your stuff at?
Sure. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. That's AE Hanson if you want to look up those usernames. My Instagram is Andrew E. Hanson. And I mean that's the 3 social media that I'm on the most, I guess.
You also do blog, correct?
I do have a blog. I just started it this year. It's Teach Wonder, so teach-wonder.blogspot.com. Usually when I post, I'll share it on Twitter and other
Okay.
social media too, if you want to see that there. But yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, podcast number 2 is in the books. We'd like to thank the production crew in the background. We'd like to thank Mr. Hanson one more time. If we haven't figured out who podcast number 3 person is going to be, but if you do have some suggestions for us, please hit us up at social media. Is it social media at Wem Schools or social media class? One of the two.
I think it's social media.
Social media at wemschools.org, and give us some suggestions who you would like to hear. Thank you.